Nachi free.
Can't we all just get along? Of course we can. And for the most part we do. But you wouldn't think so by following the news. Though there's no denying that this is turning out to be one of the craziest election years in a long time. And with yet another Islamic terrorist attack in Nice, France that killed over 80 people, not to mention the latest breaking news of the military coup in Turkey, and what's still going on in our country after the deaths of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, and the ensuing murders of 5 police officers in Dallas, Texas. Even people who don't normally follow the news are realizing that these are some crazy, scary times, which is all the more reason why people need to relax. Stop jumping to conclusions, stop it with the conspiracy theories, but most importantly, stop calling for a race war, or any other war for that matter. And a lot of this crazy talk is coming from both sides, the left and the right. Now, in my last video that was barely watched by anybody, I ran my mouth off about how certain left-wing media outlets like the Huffington Post sensationalized the deaths of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile during the exact same week that Hillary Clinton was cleared of criminal charges by the FBI. It seems to me, and anyone who chooses to view these events as objectively and honestly as possible, that certain left-of-center news outlets took advantage of a coincidental set of tragedies and shamelessly jumped to conclusions, and in the most condescending, smug manner possible, they help fuel the dangerously false narrative that innocent black men are being targeted by police for extermination. And some of this news coverage should serve as a textbook case study for anyone in the media about the dangers of virtue signaling and race baiting and their inevitably unintended consequences. Yet now's not the time to be laying blame and insulting the other side. Not that it's ever a good time to do that, but it's always a good time to call people out on falsehoods and alarmism, especially when people are being needlessly killed. Which is why I'd like to dedicate this video to the equally dangerous and potentially lethal talk from media outlets on the right side of the political rainbow. People who are actually talking about a race war, no less. Are you out of your rabbit-ass minds? Here are a few examples of what I'm talking about. I'm going to begin with the New York Post's coverage. Before they even knew it was going to be 5 dead police officers, they were already calling it a civil war. However, it's worth noting that their ideologically rival paper, the Daily News, was also covering this from a completely different angle. Both of these are clear cases of agitating the public, and it is very possible to inform people without agitating them. But like I said, in this video I'm going to stick with the right-wing perspective. The next example is from a former Republican congressman, Joe Walsh from Illinois, who literally called for a war. By the way, not to be confused with one of my favorite rock stars, because the real Joe Walsh is too cool and too smart to ever tweet something as recklessly incendiary as, "This is now war. Watch out, Obama, and watch out, Black Lives Matter, punks. Real America's coming after you." Look, I'm no fan of the Black Lives Matter movement either. I think they're dangerously dishonest. They're focusing on the symptoms of crime and poverty as opposed to the root causes. And they're violently disrupting the much-needed public discourse for a truly honest conversation about racism and its solutions in this country. However, these words do not help out the situation either. They merely inflame it and give them more ammunition for their temper tantrums. The next example is from Fox News, who featured this prosecutor who wants to sue Obama along with Al Sharpton and Louis Farrakhan for a class action suit of $2 billion because he believes they're inciting a race war.
A former federal prosecutor is with me now. He says that he sees President Obama as extremely divisive, so much so he is suing the president. The suit also includes the founders of Black Lives Matter, so that is to say Al Sharpton, Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, and former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder. It accuses all of them of inciting a race war that led eventually to the fatal Dallas police shootings and seeks damages of more than $2 billion. I just want to ask you, what is the most egregious? And it sounds like you have a list of many. You have many people who agree with you. In your mind, what is the most egregious example?
Well, the most egregious example is not representing all the American people, President Obama. He only has a problem if there's crime against blacks, or crimes against Muslims, or black Muslims for that matter. But he doesn't represent the rest of the country, and the people are beginning to see that. They see it in terms of 5 dead police officers in Dallas. The reality is that you should be the president of all the people, not just your people. And certainly there's been discrimination against African Americans. That's terrible. I consider myself a civil rights lawyer, in effect. And in what I do, I try to keep the government honest and treat everybody the same.
Yet that sounds like a pretty flimsy case, but I'll get back to that example later. Moving right along, Alex Jones, who I do not rely on for my news, though I find him pretty amusing and I like to check in with him from time to time for a good laugh. He had posted this video. The American race war has begun.
And I've already decided, if I'm out in public and I hear somebody saying kill police, I'm going to break their jaw. I'm done. And that's not talk. I'm doing it. You go chanting around me, hey, let's go kill some frickin' cops because they're in a uniform, and of course you're too cowardly to do it. You want somebody else to do it. I'm going to punch you right in the face. And I don't usually talk like that in 20 years on air. And it's not that I'm kissing the cops' ass either. But I'm going to explain something to everybody. This attack is by multinational corporations trying to bring down America. So as many problems as the police have, they're the face of local government and our due process and what's left of it. And when they bring that down, the whole country's going down in a globalist takeover. And then your checks aren't going to cash anymore. There's not going to be any good electricity. This damn society's going to break down like Cuba or Venezuela or Eastern Europe. And
Thank you, Alex Jones. The interesting thing about him is that he serves as a canary in the coal mine, but not for the reasons he thinks he does. He thinks he's warning us about one world government conspiracies, but it seems to me that he's proving the opposite, because if there is a global conspiracy, he would not only have been silenced, he would have been assassinated by now. And I sometimes wonder if he secretly desires that. Anyway, one thing's for sure, he's your go-to guy for stockpiling materials in case there's a zombie apocalypse. And speaking of apocalyptic nightmares and the religious fanaticism that fuels them, that's where Louis Farrakhan comes back to mind. While most people would consider him from the left, his undeniable religious zealotry and authoritarian streak makes me think he's so to the left that he bounces right back around to the right. I stumbled into this video by doing just a simple search on YouTube for race wars. Because whenever I come up with an idea for a video, I always like to check and see if anybody else has come up with a similar idea. The interesting thing was, I wanted to see if anyone had come up with the same title that I came up with. Stop Calling for a Race War, which has a nice ring to it. But instead, my search yielded a series of videos by people who seem to want a race war. Anyway, I think it behooves anyone who does value black lives and human lives, period, to listen to this video, which I actually found thanks to Jesse Lee Peterson's YouTube channel.
This happened in Miami at Mount Zion Baptist Church.
I'm looking for 10,000 in the midst of 1 million. Listen, listen. I'm looking for 10,000 in the midst of the million.
Midst of the million.
10,000 fearless men.
Fearless.
Who say death is sweeter than continued life under tyranny.
Where's the tyranny?
Death is sweeter than to continue to live and bury our children while white folks give the killer hamburgers. Death is sweeter. Retaliation is prescribed in matters of the slain. Retaliation is a prescription from God to calm the breath of those whose children have been slain. So if the federal government will not intercede in our affairs, then we must rise up and kill those who kill us. Stop them and kill them and let them feel the pain of death that we are feeling.
By the way, wouldn't this be a strong case for that prosecutor I mentioned before? Because his main reason sounded pretty flimsy. Now, I don't know if we should bother suing Louis Farrakhan for $2 billion, because after all, who's going to pay for that? However, I do believe all those words sound like hate speech. Actually, I think it goes a little bit beyond hate speech. This man's literally calling for a genocide, and people are applauding him. I find this to be both spine-chillingly frightening as well as heartbreakingly sad to see how easily some people would be so willing to blindly and mindlessly follow whatever is fed to them by the news or their so-called leaders. And sometimes just the headlines alone is all it takes to rile them up enough to justify murdering fellow human beings without a second thought. Yet I'm not that worried, because the talk of a race war in this country has been going on for years, as you can see on the dates of some of the videos that have been posted. However, it would be nice if it finally came to an end before more people get killed. But the last thing I want to do is spread alarmism either. So let me end this video about all these negative events on a positive note. While we need to be vigilant of all this crazy race war talk, we also need to remember that the majority of humanity is better than this, even if media outlets from the left or the right try to make us think otherwise as they continue to exploit tragedies just to pit us against each other in order to serve up even more bad news like a vicious cycle. Please, stop it with the race war talk. And thanks for watching.
Homegrown